Your soulmate is traveling right now, toward you, because. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because your soulmate has started a journey they never imagined they would take. Not a journey planned on a calendar. Not a journey chosen months in advance. Not even a journey they fully understood when it began. This journey started with a feeling. A feeling they tried to ignore. A feeling they tried to explain away. A feeling they convinced themselves would eventually disappear. But it never did. And listen to this. For a very long time, your soulmate remained exactly where they were. Emotionally. Mentally. Spiritually. Not because they were happy there. Because it felt safe there. Safe places have a strange power over people. Even when they are unhappy. Even when they feel stuck. Even when they know something is missing. Safety can become comfortable. Comfort can become routine. Routine can become a prison. And before they realized it, your soulmate had spent years living inside that comfort zone. Because your heart needs this right now, because many people don't stay where they are because they are fulfilled. They stay because they are afraid of change. Afraid of uncertainty. Afraid of what they might discover if they finally moved forward. Your soulmate understands that now. And listen to this. At first, they didn't recognize the feeling. It arrived quietly. Almost unnoticed. A thought during a busy day. A memory during a quiet evening. A sudden feeling of nostalgia. A question that appeared out of nowhere. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Yet the feeling kept returning. Again. And again. And again. The more they ignored it, the more persistent it became. Like a message trying to get their attention. Like a voice patiently waiting to be heard. And your heart needs this right now because sometimes the soul speaks softly. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And if we ignore the whisper long enough, it simply keeps returning. Your soulmate has been hearing that whisper. And lately, it has become impossible to ignore. And listen to this. There were moments when they convinced themselves it was nothing. Just a passing emotion. Just a temporary thought. Just another memory floating through their mind. Yet every time they dismissed it, it returned stronger. Not louder. Clearer. More meaningful. More difficult to explain away. The feeling wasn't asking for attention anymore. It was demanding honesty. And honesty can be frightening. Because honesty changes things. Honesty creates movement. Honesty forces decisions. Honesty forces growth. Your soulmate was beginning to realize that. And your heart needs this right now because growth rarely begins when everything feels comfortable. Growth begins when comfort starts feeling too small. Your soulmate has reached that point. And listen to this. Recently, they found themselves reflecting on the path their life had taken. The choices they made. The opportunities they accepted. The opportunities they rejected. The dreams they followed. The dreams they abandoned. And while looking back, they noticed something surprising. Many of the decisions they made were based on practicality, logic, responsibility, expectations. Yet some part of them still felt incomplete. Not because their life was bad. Because something meaningful seemed missing. Something they couldn't quite identify. At least not at first. Because your heart needs this right now, because sometimes we spend years searching for what's missing without realizing we've already encountered it. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that possibility. And listen to this. The more they reflected, the more they noticed a pattern. Whenever they imagined genuine happiness, a certain feeling appeared. Whenever they imagined a future that felt authentic, a certain image appeared. Whenever they imagined a life built on honesty rather than obligation, the same emotional pull returned. Again. And again. And again. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Not because they wanted it to be true. Because it simply was. The heart has its own language. Its own wisdom. Its own direction. And eventually, it becomes impossible to silence. Your soulmate is finally listening. And your heart needs this right now because some journeys don't begin with certainty. They begin with curiosity. With questions. With the feeling that there is something important waiting ahead. Your soulmate has started feeling exactly that. And listen to this. There was one night that changed everything. A quiet night. An ordinary night. Nothing dramatic happened. No major event occurred. Yet something shifted inside them. They sat alone with their thoughts. No distractions. No obligations. No outside voices. Just silence. And within that silence, a realization appeared. A realization that would eventually become the beginning of this journey. The realization was simple. They were tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Tired of pretending certain feelings didn't exist. Tired of carrying unanswered questions. Tired of wondering what would happen if they finally trusted themselves. Tired of standing still. Because your heart needs this right now, because eventually standing still becomes more painful than moving forward. Your soulmate has reached that moment. And listen to this. The journey they're taking isn't really about distance. It isn't really about geography. It's about courage. The courage to leave behind old fears. The courage to leave behind old limitations. The courage to stop letting uncertainty control every decision. For years they waited for confidence. Now they understand something powerful. Confidence doesn't always come first. Sometimes action comes first. Sometimes courage comes first. Sometimes the journey begins before certainty arrives. And that realization changed everything. And your heart needs this right now because many people spend years waiting until they feel ready. Only to discover readiness comes from movement. Not before it. After it. Your soulmate is discovering that truth firsthand. And listen to this. The farther they move on this emotional journey, the more they feel something they haven't felt in a long time. Hope. Real hope. Not fantasy. Not wishful thinking. Hope rooted in honesty. Hope rooted in self-understanding. Hope rooted in finally listening to what their heart has been trying to tell them all along. That hope feels different. Stronger. Healthier. More peaceful. And for the first time in a very long time, the future doesn't feel frightening. It feels possible. Because your heart needs this right now, because possibility is born the moment fear stops making every decision. Your soulmate is slowly reaching that place. And listen to this. They don't know exactly where this journey will lead. They don't know exactly how everything will unfold. They don't have every answer. They don't have every detail. But they do know one thing. Standing still is no longer an option. The journey has already begun. The first step has already been taken. The heart has already spoken. And for the first time, they are finally listening. That is why they are traveling. That is why they are moving forward. That is why everything feels different now. Because deep down, they understand something they never fully understood before. Some journeys are not about finding someone else. They are about finally finding yourself. And that discovery changes everything. If you enjoy spiritual and uplifting content, please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after taking the first emotional steps of their journey, your soulmate experienced something they never expected. A sign. Not necessarily a dramatic sign. Not a flashing message from the universe. Not a magical coincidence. Something much quieter. Much more personal. A realization that arrived when they least expected it. And listen to this. For a long time, they believed they were moving in the right direction. They followed plans. They followed routines. They followed expectations. Everything looked correct on the outside. Everything appeared stable. Everything seemed logical. Yet deep down, something felt incomplete. Not broken. Not wrong. Incomplete. Like a story missing an important chapter. Like a puzzle with one missing piece. Like a journey without a destination. And no matter how hard they tried to ignore that feeling, it remained. Because your heart needs this right now, because sometimes life looks perfect on paper while the heart quietly whispers that something important is missing. Your soulmate has been hearing that whisper for a long time. And listen to this. At first, they dismissed it. Everyone has doubts sometimes. Everyone questions their path occasionally. Everyone wonders, what if? So they told themselves this was normal. Just another passing thought. Just another temporary emotion. Yet unlike other emotions, this one never disappeared. Instead, it grew stronger. Every day. Every week. Every month. Until eventually they could no longer pretend it wasn't there. And that's when they started paying attention. Really paying attention. Because your heart needs this right now, because awareness changes everything. The moment we stop running from our feelings, we start understanding them. Your soulmate was finally ready to understand. And listen to this. One evening, while reflecting on life, they noticed something unusual. Every time they imagined a future that felt truly meaningful, a certain feeling appeared. Not a person. Not a place. A feeling. A feeling of peace. A feeling of belonging. A feeling of authenticity. And when they followed that feeling deeper, they realized it was connected to memories they had never fully let go of. Memories that still carried emotional weight. Memories that still felt alive. Memories connected to you. That realization surprised them. Because they thought those feelings would have faded by now. They thought time would erase them. They thought life would move them beyond them. But life had other plans. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful connections rarely disappear simply because time passes. Sometimes time reveals their importance. Your soulmate is discovering that now. And listen to this. The sign wasn't one moment. It was many moments. Small moments. Ordinary moments. A familiar memory appearing unexpectedly. A feeling returning without warning. A dream they couldn't forget. A thought that refused to leave. Individually, these moments seemed insignificant. Together, they told a story. A story they had been avoiding. A story they were finally ready to read. And that story pointed in one direction. Toward honesty. Toward truth. Toward the future they actually wanted. Because your heart needs this right now, because the heart often leaves clues long before it reveals the full truth. Your soulmate has been collecting those clues for years. And now they finally understand what they mean. And listen to this. As they became more honest with themselves, another realization appeared. They had spent years asking everyone else what they should do. Listening to opinions. Listening to advice. Listening to expectations. Yet very little time listening to themselves. Very little time listening to their own heart. Very little time asking what they genuinely wanted. That realization hit hard. Because suddenly they understood how disconnected they had become from their own truth. And for the first time in a long time, they decided to change that. Because your heart needs this right now, because sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply listening to yourself after years of listening to everyone else. Your soulmate is learning that lesson. And listen to this. The more they listened, the clearer everything became. The confusion started fading. The doubts became quieter. The path ahead became easier to see. Not because every question was answered. Because one important truth finally stood out above the rest. The truth that certain feelings remained important. Certain memories remained meaningful. Certain connections remained unfinished. And no matter how much life changed, that truth stayed the same. Because your heart needs this right now, because what consistently returns to the heart deserves attention. Your soulmate can no longer ignore that. And listen to this. For the first time in years, they stopped asking, "What will happen if I move forward?" And started asking, "What happens if I never do?" That question changed everything. Because suddenly standing still seemed more frightening than movement. Silence seemed more painful than honesty. Regret seemed heavier than uncertainty. And once they understood that, the journey truly began. Not because they had all the answers. Because they finally trusted themselves enough to start searching for them. And that trust became the sign they had been waiting for all along. Because your heart needs this right now, because sometimes the sign isn't outside of us. Sometimes the sign is the moment we finally stop doubting what our heart has been trying to say. Your soulmate has reached that moment. And now the journey continues. Step by step. Truth by truth. Closer and closer to the destination they never expected to find. If this message is touching your heart, take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after all the signs, all the realizations, and all the moments of reflection, your soulmate has reached a point where something inside them has fundamentally changed. They can no longer pretend they don't know what they know. They can no longer ignore what they feel. They can no longer return to the version of themselves that existed before this journey began. And listen to this. For a very long time, they lived comfortably inside uncertainty. Not because uncertainty felt good. Because uncertainty felt familiar. As long as they remained uncertain, they didn't have to make difficult choices. As long as they remained uncertain, they didn't have to confront uncomfortable truths. As long as they remained uncertain, they could continue telling themselves there was still more time. But lately, uncertainty has stopped feeling comfortable. It has started feeling restrictive. Like a room that once felt spacious but now feels too small. Like clothing they have outgrown. Like a chapter that has reached its natural ending. Because your heart needs this right now, because growth changes people. And once a person grows beyond an old version of themselves, returning becomes impossible. Your soulmate is discovering that now. And listen to this. The farther they travel on this emotional journey, the more they realize that the person they were a year ago would not recognize the person they are becoming. The old version of them was guided by fear. The new version is learning to trust. The old version avoided difficult truths. The new version seeks them. The old version waited for certainty. The new version understands that certainty is not always required. That realization has transformed everything. Because suddenly, the things that once seemed impossible now seem achievable. The conversations that once felt terrifying now feel necessary. The future that once felt confusing now feels full of possibility. And your heart needs this right now, because transformation often happens quietly. One realization at a time. One lesson at a time. One brave choice at a time. Your soulmate has been changing in exactly that way. And listen to this. There was a moment recently when they looked back at all the reasons they once gave themselves for staying where they were. The excuses. The doubts. The fears. The endless what-ifs. At one time, those reasons felt convincing. At one time, those reasons felt powerful. At one time, those reasons controlled everything. But now? They look different. Smaller. Weaker. Less convincing. Because once truth becomes clear, old excuses lose their power. And your heart needs this right now because fear often looks strongest before we challenge it. After we challenge it, we realize how much of its power came from our belief in it. Your soulmate is learning that lesson. And listen to this. One thing surprises them more than anything else. The closer they move toward honesty, the more peaceful they feel. They expected honesty to create chaos. Instead, it created clarity. They expected honesty to increase fear. Instead, it reduced it. They expected honesty to complicate everything. Instead, it simplified everything. Because when people stop fighting their truth, life becomes easier to understand. Your soulmate is finally experiencing that freedom. And listen to this. The truth that keeps pulling them forward is not complicated. In fact, it is remarkably simple. It is the realization that some things matter. Some people matter. Some connections matter. And pretending otherwise changes nothing. The truth remains. Patiently. Quietly. Waiting to be acknowledged. For years they tried convincing themselves that enough time would erase everything. Now they understand something different. Time doesn't erase what is meaningful. Time reveals it. Because your heart needs this right now, because what survives time often deserves our attention. Your soulmate has watched certain feelings survive every season of their life. That survival means something. And listen to this. Recently, they imagined what would happen if they turned back. If they abandoned this journey. If they returned to the comfort of silence. If they chose familiarity over truth. For a moment, the idea felt tempting. Silence is comfortable. Avoidance is familiar. Staying where you are requires less courage. But the longer they imagined it, the more empty it felt. Because deep down, they knew something important. The old version of themselves is gone. The person who could ignore these truths no longer exists. The person who could remain comfortable in uncertainty no longer exists. The journey has already changed them. Too much. And there is no going backward now. Because your heart needs this right now, because growth has a point of no return. A moment where awareness becomes permanent. Your soulmate has crossed that line. And listen to this. As each day passes, they feel themselves becoming more aligned with their authentic self. Not perfect. Not fearless. Just honest. And honesty has become their compass. Whenever confusion appears, honesty guides them. Whenever doubt appears, honesty grounds them. Whenever fear appears, honesty reminds them what truly matters. That inner alignment feels powerful. Powerful because it is real. Powerful because it is earned. Powerful because it comes from self-understanding rather than outside approval. And your heart needs this right now because the strongest guidance often comes from within. Your soulmate is finally learning to trust that guidance. And listen to this. The truth pulling them forward isn't a destination. It isn't a person. It isn't an outcome. It is authenticity. The desire to live honestly. The desire to stop hiding. The desire to stop pretending. The desire to build a future that reflects what genuinely matters to them. And every time they move closer to that authenticity, they feel something incredible. Relief. Relief that they no longer have to carry the burden of denial. Relief that they no longer have to silence their heart. Relief that they can finally move forward with integrity. Because your heart needs this right now, because authenticity creates peace. Not instant peace. Lasting peace. The kind that comes from knowing you are finally being true to yourself. Your soulmate has started experiencing that peace. And listen to this. The journey is not over. There are still lessons ahead. Still discoveries ahead. Still moments of courage ahead. But one thing is already certain. They are no longer the person who began this journey. They are stronger, clearer, braver, more honest, and most importantly, more willing to trust what their heart has been trying to tell them all along. That is why they cannot turn back. That is why they keep moving forward. That is why the truth continues calling them onward. Because once a person finally discovers what matters most, standing still is no longer an option. Join our spiritual community by subscribing and keeping notifications on, so you never miss a message meant for your soul. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after everything your soulmate has experienced, after every lesson, every doubt, every delay, and every moment of reflection, they have finally reached the most important realization of all. The realization that changed the entire journey. The realization that explains why they keep moving forward. The realization that answers every question they have been asking themselves for so long. And listen to this. For years, your soulmate believed they were searching for certainty. They believed they needed answers. They believed they needed guarantees. They believed they needed proof that every step would work out exactly as planned. So they waited. And waited. And waited. Yet no matter how long they waited, certainty never arrived. Because certainty was never what they were truly searching for. They understand that now. Because your heart needs this right now, because many people spend years chasing certainty when what they really need is courage. Your soulmate has finally discovered the difference. And listen to this. The journey began the moment they stopped asking, "What if things go wrong?" And started asking, "What if I never follow my heart?" That single question changed everything. Because suddenly the risk of staying still felt greater than the risk of moving forward. The fear of regret became larger than the fear of uncertainty. And for the first time in a very long time, they realized something powerful. Life isn't meant to be lived entirely inside comfort zones. Life isn't meant to be lived entirely inside safe choices. Life isn't meant to be lived entirely inside fear. Life is meant to be lived honestly. And honesty became their new direction. And your heart needs this right now, because honesty has a way of simplifying things. Not making them easy. Making them clear. Your soulmate is finally seeing clearly. And listen to this. The farther they traveled, the more they noticed old fears losing their power. The fears that once seemed enormous now seem small. The doubts that once controlled every decision now feel weaker. The excuses that once sounded convincing now sound empty. Not because those fears disappeared. Because something stronger appeared. Truth. Real truth. The kind that survives every challenge. The kind that survives every distraction. The kind that survives every attempt to ignore it. And the truth they discovered was simple. They had spent too much time living for everyone else. Too much time worrying about expectations. Too much time worrying about approval. Too much time asking others what they should want. And not nearly enough time listening to their own heart. Because your heart needs this right now, because eventually every person reaches a point where outside opinions lose their importance. A point where authenticity becomes more valuable than approval. Your soulmate has reached that point. And listen to this. One evening, while reflecting on everything they had learned, they imagined their life as a long road. A road filled with choices. Filled with crossroads. Filled with moments where they could have gone left or right. And suddenly they noticed something surprising. Every meaningful lesson had pointed them toward the same destination. Not a place. A truth. A truth about themselves. A truth about what matters. A truth about what they truly want. And every path eventually led back to the same realization. That some connections change you. Some people leave permanent marks on your heart. Some experiences become part of who you are. No matter how much time passes. Because your heart needs this right now, because not every connection is meant to be forgotten. Some are meant to teach. Some are meant to transform. Some are meant to awaken parts of us we didn't know existed. Your soulmate believes this journey did exactly that. And listen to this. The most surprising discovery wasn't about love. It wasn't about destiny. It wasn't about the future. The most surprising discovery was about themselves. They discovered how much fear had influenced their decisions. How often they doubted themselves. How often they ignored their own intuition. How often they abandoned their own truth in order to feel safe. And that realization hurt. But it also healed. Because awareness creates change. Awareness creates growth. Awareness creates freedom. Your soulmate finally feels free. Because your heart needs this right now, because freedom isn't always about escaping something. Sometimes freedom is simply becoming honest. Honest about what matters. Honest about what hurts. Honest about what your heart has been trying to say all along. Your soulmate has finally become that honest. And listen to this. Now, standing at the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, they feel something they haven't felt in years. Peace. Not because every question has been answered. Not because every outcome is guaranteed. Not because life suddenly became perfect. Because they finally trust themselves. And trust changes everything. Trust creates confidence. Trust creates movement. Trust creates possibility. For the first time, they believe they can follow their own heart. For the first time, they believe they can stop living according to fear. For the first time, they believe they deserve a future built on authenticity. And that belief is carrying them forward. Because your heart needs this right now, because self-trust is one of the most powerful forces in the world. Once people discover it, they stop waiting for permission. Your soulmate has stopped waiting. And listen to this. The real reason they are traveling toward you isn't because someone told them to. It isn't because they are being forced. It isn't because they suddenly found all the answers. They are traveling because they finally understand what matters. They are traveling because they finally stopped running. They are traveling because they finally accepted the truth. A truth they can no longer deny. A truth they can no longer silence. A truth that has followed them through every season of life. And that truth continues calling them forward. Day after day. Step after step. Moment after moment. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest journeys are guided by truth. Not convenience. Not comfort. Truth. Your soulmate is finally following theirs. And listen to this. If they could leave one final message at the end of this journey, it would be simple. Not dramatic. Not complicated. Just honest. They would say, the journey was never about finding certainty. It was about finding courage. It was never about finding perfect answers. It was about becoming honest. It was never about changing someone else. It was about changing myself. And after everything I have learned, after everything I have faced, after every fear I have overcome, I finally understand why this journey began. It began so I could become the person brave enough to listen to my heart. And that understanding has changed everything. Because now they know where they are going. Now they know why they are moving forward. Now they know why they can no longer turn back. And for the first time in a very long time, that truth feels enough. Before you go, please like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. May peace, light, and blessings always be with you.